My interest in music began in elementary school. After hearing March of the Toys by Victor Herbert from the movie Babes in Toyland, I decided it was time for me to learn to play a brass instrument. So I chose the trombone. But even back in those early days, I was already curious about music from other places. I spent many hours looking at my backyard through a big picture window in our living room. My secret wish was that aliens from another galaxy would zoom by, pick me up in a spaceship, and take me to their planet so I could study their music. But, of course, nobody ever came. I later realized that there was music from cultures all over our planet that I knew very little about. So I shifted my focus. Every time my father asked me what I wanted for Christmas or my birthday, I would tell him to go to the local record store and randomly pick out an album from the world music bin. It was through these albums that I was introduced to Javanese, Chinese, and Japanese music. These three musical traditions continue to influence my music, along with movements and sounds of nature and my years of playing in rock and jazz bands. Due to the sporadic nature of touring, in 1976, I decided to commit myself to composing and attended the Boston Conservatory. At the conservatory, they primarily taught me about the contemporary European trends in composition. Since the music I heard in my head and wanted to compose was full of peaceful, intertwining melodies, I was still unsure of how to move forward. But 10 years later, I began studies and a lifelong friendship with California composer Lou Harrison. Lou was the first to successfully combine Asian and Western styles in his compositions. At our first session at the Atlantic Center for the Arts in Florida, he handed out 3 scores for us to study, one Chinese, one Japanese, and one Javanese gamelan. Within these 3 musical traditions were the answers I had been searching for. In 1988, I studied with Lou again, but this time at his home in California. After a month of daily lessons, staying in his guest room and eating his food, I asked him about his fee. It was something he never talked about, so I brought all the cash I had and hoped it would be enough. He simply asked me if I was wealthy. I replied that I wasn't wealthy, but wasn't poor either, and would be happy to pay him whatever he wanted. He told me that the Atlantic Center for the Arts had paid him enough and that he didn't need any money from me. He told me that one day I would have the chance to help someone out in a similar way, and that would be payment enough. I couldn't imagine that I would ever be in a position to help someone else out like that, but 4 years later, I had that opportunity. I was invited to be a part of a music delegation that traveled to China and Kazakhstan to study the music of the minorities. On my second day in Beijing, I met Gao Hong, a wonderful pipa player who played for me and allowed another delegate to film her. What Lou had said finally made sense to me. I asked Gao Hong if she'd ever want to come to the US and do a tour, and she immediately agreed. And I spent the next year and a half lining up a 10-city tour for her. It was something I had never done before, but I wanted to continue Lou Harrison's legacy of kindness. Gao Hong and I corresponded through a translator and fax machine and eventually fell in love and married. We just celebrated our 28th wedding anniversary last May. So Lou Harrison's kindness and generosity had major impacts on both my musical and personal lives.